sea, which day by day receives the rippling rills.
The Bible Land, Walking Where Jesus Walked, narrated by Dr. Bill Humble. Part 4, The Land of Galilee.
The story of the Dead Sea Scrolls began in 1947 at Qumran, 8 miles south of Jericho, overlooking the north end of the Dead Sea, with the mountains of Moab beyond in the distance. There are hillsides here with hundreds of caves in the hillsides. 2 shepherd boys had a herd of sheep and goats. They lost one of their animals. They were looking for it. They saw a cave opening, threw a rock into that cave opening and heard a shattering sound. They fled because they were afraid, came back later, and what they found inside that cave was pottery jars, and inside those pottery jars, 7 ancient manuscripts. We know now that those were priceless manuscripts of the Bible.
After that shepherd lost a goat here, he went up to that cave up the hill ahead of us and saw cylindrical jars in. He went in and he thought could be gold in the jars. He opened the first one scroll, the second another scroll, and he was upset. Destroying the jars, he picked the scrolls, and about 4 weeks later, the shepherd brought to my father to Bethlehem 3 scrolls. He brought Isaiah, the book of discipline, and Habakkuk. He thought I can sell them, and I used to carry Isaiah 24 feet long scroll in my car. I show it to many people. They tell me it's witchcraft, get rid of it. And my father is the one who told the shepherd to take the scrolls to a shoemaker in Bethlehem by the name of Kendall. And the shepherd did, and Kendall left them over 6 months among the old shoes. Then a bishop went to Bethlehem and bought the scrolls for $50. And then the bishop took them over to USA, sold them for $275,000 to a Jewish man by the name of Samuel Kotzman. So you can imagine that poor shepherd brought to light the biggest discovery in the 20th century. What he got out of the whole deal was $25. And that's why since 1947, when he see me in Bethlehem, he turned his back to me. He think I'm crazy when I told him they are witchcraft, the scrolls were.
After the 7 manuscripts were discovered in that first cave in 1947, the Bedouin shepherds and the archaeologists spent the next 10 years exploring hundreds and hundreds of caves in these mountainsides, looking for additional scrolls. And in 10 caves, they found manuscripts, or at least fragments of what had once been manuscripts. The most important of these discoveries was cave number 4 that we see here, that was found in 1952. Among the manuscripts that were found here in Cave 4, nearly 100 of them were biblical manuscripts. And among those biblical manuscript fragments, every single book of the Old Testament, except one, only Esther, is not included among the manuscripts that were found there in Cave 4. We know now that the Isaiah scroll that Elias carried around in his car is 2,000 years old. It is the oldest manuscript of a complete book of the Bible that's ever been discovered, and it's priceless. Qumran was excavated in the 1950s. Archaeologists found the scriptorium or library where the Essenes copied these manuscripts. They were living here when Jesus came to Jericho, only 8 miles away. But was Jesus aware of this Qumran community? We don't know. Jesus did know about the Samaritans, and he met a Samaritan woman at Jacob's Well. Jacob's Well is located between Mount Gerizim, where Samaritan priests still offer animal sacrifices today, and Mount Ebal, the Mount of Curses. Today, there's an unfinished Greek Orthodox church over Jacob's Well. This is Jacob's Well. This well was here in the days of Jesus. It may have been here in the days of Jacob, 1,500 years earlier. Jesus and his disciples left Jerusalem, walked into Samaria, stopped at this well at noon, and the disciples went into the city to find something to eat. The Samaritan woman came to draw water. She was surprised that Jesus would even speak to her. He asked for a drink of water. Then he offered to give her the living water. And she said, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and this well is deep." But the living water is the water that if we drink, we'll never thirst again. Jesus talked to her about her life and about God. And it was here, at this very spot, that Jesus said, God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. Caesarea Philippi is located at the base of Mount Hermon, where the Jordan River begins. There are ancient coins showing these niches in the wall with the city built on the hillside below them. Jesus once brought his disciples to the region of Caesarea Philippi and asked them, "Who do you say that I am?" And when Peter answered, "You're the Christ, the Son of God," Jesus promised to build the church. They may have been within sight of this great mountainside of rock when Jesus made that promise. Upon this rock, the truth that I am the Son of God, I will build my church. And just a few days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain apart, almost certainly beautiful Mount Hermon. And he was transfigured in the dead of night. And they heard the voice of God, "This is my Son, listen to him." We're crossing the Sea of Galilee as Jesus did so often, and we're coming to Capernaum. It's located there in the trees on the shore north of the sea. Jesus seems to have stayed here at Capernaum during a large part of his great Galilean ministry. Nearly 100 years ago, archaeologists found a large synagogue here. It's decorated with beautiful columns and stone carvings. It was probably built in the 3rd or 4th century. But under this synagogue, they recently uncovered the foundations of an earlier building, the Black Stones. And this may be the synagogue where Jesus taught so many times. Just east of the synagogue, archaeologists have recently been at work. And when we visit this dig, we get a little idea of how they excavate a site. They don't work with bulldozers. They work with picks and shovels and wheelbarrows. Sometimes they work with a trowel and dustpan.
Where we're working at right now, several days ago, was about 4 foot higher. In fact, it was as high as this ground right here and even a little bit higher with big boulders and stones about this size. And our objective was to go down and find where this road stopped.
It's hard, dirty work. And it's hot here at Capernaum. Remember that the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. Most of the work is done by college students, but they always work under the close supervision of trained archaeologists.
The irony is that as you go later back, the better your construction gets on some of your civilizations. You'll notice this road here, which is Byzantine, 4th, 5th century, is much more primitive than this Roman house, this Roman floor over here.
And every artifact that is found has to be cleaned and studied and recorded. Archaeologists John Wilson and Basilius Sepphoris talk about their work at Capernaum.
Of course, there are 2 excavations at Capernaum, the one the Franciscans are doing behind us and the one that we're doing here. What, in your estimation, is the greatest value of what we've done here on this site?
Well, in this side, though we didn't discover a magnificent synagogue and the churches, but we discovered the houses, the streets, and the public buildings which were here during Jesus' time, during the Roman period, the Byzantine period, and many a living quarter from the later part of the history of Capernaum. And this is very important. I mean, a city is not compounded only with synagogues and public buildings, but with living quarters and everything which is part of the town.
A lot of things that people use in their daily life, for example, like cooking pots. And
Exactly. I mean, the houses they lived in, the kitchen they used, the pots they used, and everything, the lamps they used at the times. And this is what archaeology is giving. I mean, it's taking a town and it's giving its history back, and we are restoring its history.
So a lot of people who've heard about this excavation have heard about the treasure. We had an exciting day when
yes, we had
a couple of young men pick up a stone, and then a girl comes along with a broom and sweeps and begins to scream.
I remember that day we were removing the early Arabic pavement in hope to find something earlier, and instead we found that board, which is
282 gold dinars, lots of gold. So
yeah, 22 carats, pure gold.
But we should, I think we should stress that archaeology is not hunting for treasure, right?
No. Actually, I mean, it was a gift given to us, but actually archaeologists are not treasure hunters. We're looking to restore history and to find whatever is under earth, and that's our job, just to find, objectively to find whatever is there.
John Wilson tells us about the value of the gold treasure.
So on one fell swoop, the Israelis had one of the finest collections of ancient Umayyad or Arab gold coins in the world. It's really hard to say what the value would be, but I do know that certainly to collectors the value would just be incredible. One coin similar to one of the ones in our hoard was sold in an auction in Switzerland a few years ago for 250,000 Swiss francs. It's hard to tell you what kind of excitement develops on a site like this when gold is discovered. I have to keep saying that archaeology is not hunting for treasure, and people say, "Did you find anything?" Well, we found the history of an ancient people. That's what we were looking for. But once in a while, it's sort of fun to find a treasure too, and that's what we did here.
These are the ruins of the ancient synagogue in Chorazin. It's a typical first-century synagogue, decorated on the inside with columns, the seating around the perimeter. But the really important thing about this synagogue is the location, Chorazin, because Chorazin is one of the three cities that Jesus cursed in Matthew 11. He said, "Woe to thee, Chorazin! Woe to thee, Bethsaida! If the mighty works had been done in Tyre and Sidon that were done in you, they would have repented long ago. And thou, Capernaum, shalt thou be exalted unto heaven, thou shalt be brought down to hell. If the works had been done in Sodom that were done in you, it would have repented and remained to this day." There are many cities in the Bible land that were there in Jesus' day that are still flourishing cities today. But these three that Jesus cursed, only ruins like this. We're on the Mount of the Beatitudes, overlooking the north end of the Sea of Galilee. And the Sea of Galilee is one of the most beautiful spots in the Bible land, and also one of the most important in Jesus' ministry. The sea is about 13 miles long from north to south, 8 miles across at the widest spot, large enough that they've not been able to build a church over the Sea of Galilee. And there are so many important things connected with the ministry of Jesus here. It was here that he called his first disciples, Peter and Andrew, James and John. "Leave your nets and your fishing and come and follow after me, and I'll make you fishers of men." Somewhere around where we are now, the Sermon on the Mount was preached. Jesus walked on the water. He calmed the storm with the words, "Peace, be still." And there's so many of these sites around the Sea of Galilee that can still be identified. For example, over there in the distance is a canyon that is clearly visible on the horizon. There was an ancient Roman road that came through that canyon. It connected Nazareth, Jesus' hometown, with Capernaum. And every time Jesus left Nazareth and came to Capernaum, he would have followed that ancient Roman road. On the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee was the little village of Magdala. We read about it in the New Testament. Mary came from Magdala, and we call her Mary Magdalene. About 2 miles to the east of here on the shore, Capernaum, so important in the ministry of Jesus. It was there that he spent most of his time during his 3-year public ministry. Here on the Mount of the Beatitudes, or somewhere near the sea, Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Don't be anxious about your life, what you shall eat or drink. If God clothes the grass of the field, will he not much more clothe you, O men of little faith? Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things shall be yours as well." The land of the Gadarenes is located on the east side of the Jordan River, in the Sea of Galilee. And we're all familiar with the story of one of the miracles of Jesus that took place here. He cast the evil spirits into a herd of swine, and the swine rushed down the mountainside into the Sea of Galilee and were drowned. This is the only very steep mountainside like that on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. And therefore, in the 4th century, the Christians believed that this was the site where that miracle had taken place, and they built this beautiful Byzantine church on the site. This church is noted for the beautiful mosaics, and the beauty of the mosaics can still be seen after all of these years. After a ministry of 3 years, Jesus came to Jerusalem for the last time. He was crucified somewhere called the Place of the Skull, and he was buried in some tomb like this one. But on the 3rd day, he was raised and appeared to his disciples.
This is one of the most authentic sites in the Holy Land, known by the name of Emmaus. Reading in Luke 24 chapter, Jesus met 2 men on the road from Jerusalem to Emmaus. It was late in the afternoon. They start discussing, talking what about happened in Jerusalem, the crucifixion. And because it was late, they invited the Lord, and the Lord did accept the invitation. And after the Lord started blessing the bread, their eyes were opened, and they recognized the Lord, then he disappeared. I'm sitting next to the Roman road. If you walk on this very pavement, you can see I walked where Jesus walked. To my right here is an ancient flour mill stone. There are a lot of them around here. In each home you check here, you see an eye, what we call it a wine press. The major income to the inhabitants of Emmaus at that time was selling the wine to people traveling, taking this road from Jerusalem to Jaffa toward the ocean. So this is the road where Jesus walked from Jerusalem to Emmaus.
The sunrise over the Sea of Galilee is so beautiful. But the time came when Jesus saw his last sunrise over the Sea of Galilee and headed south for Jerusalem. For this was the will of the Father, and this was the reason why he came, to go up to the holy city, to die, to be buried, and to rise again the 3rd day.